Now let's talk about the French Revolution. After the Industrial Revolution, it's time to talk about the French Revolution in our series of the World History lectures. So, outbreak of the French Revolution in 1789 was the consequence of the deep underlying political, social, economic inequalities that permeated 18th century's France. So it was mostly because of the inequality that was there in the French society, and we also study in through the different thinkers that the inequality is one of the reason. That's why the revolution takes place, and revolution here means the changing of the government, changing of the political system, economic system, and the similar kind of revolution that Marx has talked about against the capitalist class because of the exploitation and the inequalities that was permeating because of the capitalist system. Now, discussing the background of the French Revolution, the political background can be seen in the form of the political establishment which was there under the Bourbon dynasty. King Louis XVI was living a lavish lifestyle where the masses were suffering in order to get just two meals in a day. Absolute monarchy was there, and king was ruling by the divine rights. Decades of the Anglo-French rivalry resulted into a series of war from 1740 to 1763, and this was also the time of the American Revolution that French has supported the Americans against the British. So there was a Anglo-French rivalry that was going on. Also, the political establishment was monarchy that was ruling with the divine rights, not from the wishes of the people. That was completely alienating them. And here we see that the later soft French rulers sent financial and military support to the American Revolution in 1786, further increased the financial burden on the French. King could consult other state too through the State General, and State General was the entity that was having the members from all states. The French society was divided into three states. We can see from this diagram: state 1, state 2, state 3. So this is state 1, state 2, state 3. So state 1 was having other the clergies, and state 2 were having the nobles, and state 3 was having the common peoples, that was having no private property. They were just workers, they were just artisans, they were just military men, and serving to the first and second state. So the state general were assembly of these three states, but in three different sittings. And this was the one. This now it has happened that 175 years has gone, but no state general meeting was called. All three state votes separately on the motion, and so this is how the mechanism of the state general went, that the three state meet in three different sittings, and all three state voted in different in the separate and separately in the motion. And if any two of the state has agreed to any motion or disagreed with the motion, the motion is acted upon accordingly. So although the state 3, which were having lot of people, but state 1 and 2 were having the common interest to not give the taxes, and have a lot of private property and just exploit the third estate and just keep them poor, keep them miserable, keep them obligated by the divine rule and different things. And if we see the social background of the state general, three states in French allocation of the hierarchy were in nature. First was religious clergy, the population was around 1%. Second was nobility, part of royal court, held high administrative position. A population was again around 1%. Third was a more heterogeneous group, having peasants, guilds, educated professional class composed of the teachers, doctors, lawyers, and population was around 98%. The feudal system prevailed in the agrarian sphere, while the guild system was closed recruitment process prevailed in the manufacturing area. So there was a less economic opportunity that we are seeing, that guild system was closed recruited process, that only few people could get into those things to make some art, to make some craft, and feudal system was prevailed in the agrarian system, which were very exploitative. Like, you are working in someone else's land, you can be thrown out of the land at any time, at any point. And closed guild system restricted the entry of the new individual that in these crafts. So the people were very discontented. They were not having job, they were not having food, and inflation was very high. Further, the church prevailed as a powerful political and social institution with taxation powers and power to make law as well. Further, the church owned about 33% of the land in the France, increasing its economic significance further. So almost one third of the land was owned by just 1% of the population, that was the religious clergies. And the churches were having very powerful political and social influence on the institutions. So this was again adding to the miseries of the common people. Coming to the economic sphere, if we see the pre-industrial revolution time was there. So industrial revolution was yet to come in France. Agriculture based society was there, mostly the feudal system prevailed. About the four fifth of the production was taken as a taxes. If we take out 4/5, that is about 80% of the production was taken as a tax, and 20% was there in order to feed yourself, in order to sell and buy or trade, whatever. While 98% of the population paid the high rate of income taxes, revenue base of the French government was narrow, because even if you are taxing 98% of the people, but they do not have anything to give. The 80% is almost 80% of the they produce, that is you are taking as a tax, but this much taxation will lead to the inequality between the religious, clergy, nobles, and with the commoners. And this made the clear case of any kind of revolution. So remember this, wherever you see the revolution, the main cause of the revolution is when it hurts the most, when it hurts the prices of the food, prices of the fuel, and basic living condition anywhere in the world. That's where the French Revolution started, when it hurted people the most. They were not having enough to feed themselves, to their children, to survive, because of the large taxation. And no taxes was there in the first and second estate. They collectively owned about 60% of the wealth, and church itself was owning one third of the wealth. And they were of the view to impose additional tax on the people. So this clearly made more discontent up in the masses. 1786 to 88, France witnessed a coup, a crop failure due to the drought, flood, and hailstorm led to the food shortages and high prices. So adding to their misery, after the taxation, the natural disaster took place in form of the drought, in form of the flood, in the form of the hailstorm, that has further led to the shortage of the food, and which has increased the inflation further. Income inequality, regressive taxation, deep political, social, economic inequalities led to the dissatisfaction, and this led to resentment, and finally in the form of the revolution. Now, event that led to the French Revolution, if we see, the immediate cause was worsening the food shortage and the inflation. It was because of the higher taxation, so the peasants were not having enough capital to further invest in some form of the capital investment in their farms, or and again the natural disaster that struck in the form of the flood, in the form of the drought and the hailstorm. And the financial burden was very high, because only third estate was subject to taxes, but the 60% of the wealth was owned by the first and second estate. Industrial revolution was yet to happen. So one of the benefits of the industrial revolution that is very much debated is about the society of abundance, that the industrial revolution will increase the production. It will provide the job to the people. They will have the wages, they will have enough wages to buy those products. They will have they will add to the production of the economy, and the overall GDP of the country and the living standard will grow. It is kind of a trickle down economy that we are thinking about. and king proposed to increase the taxes further 1789. It is the same time when the France was having the crop failure, the natural disaster, and already the inflation were very high, and then king proposed to increase the taxation further. Finance minister of the king proposed to increase the taxes from the first and second estate. So the finance minister was advising king that we should increase the taxes from the first and second estate instead of third estate, because they were already overburdened with the 80% of the taxes, and further increase in the taxation will increase the dissatisfaction, which will lead to the resentment. However, given the numerical superiority of the first and second estate put together, the third estate representatives argued for the reform of the composition of the state journal. They demanded to increase the representation of the third estate representatives from 300 to 600. All the third estate must sit together to vote to arrive into the final decision, and Louis XVI allowed to increase the representation for the third estate from 300 to 600, but not allowed joint sitting, and fired his finance minister. So when the king was thinking about increasing the taxation, and his finance minister proposed to increase taxes from the first and second estate, the king hasn't taken it very well, and he fired his finance minister. However, the third estate was demanding that the number of representatives that third estate were having should increase. Like the first, second, and third estate, all three were having 300 representatives, and the third estate was saying that we were in a larger number, so the representatives should be more large in quantity from the third estate. They were demanding it to increase from 300 to 600, and also any decision which should be taken for any kind of reforms, any kind of taxation should be taken when all three states are set together, not voting in a separate chambers, because in that case the first and second state will always be having the consensus, if not all, but they will always have the majority to work in their own interest. So the interest of the third state will never be served. Okay. So 1789 May 5, meeting of the State General happened in the Paris. Louis XVI failed to incorporate the demand of the third estate, that was the joint sitting, although he increased the third estate from 300 to 600, but he failed to incorporate demand of the joint sitting. And in June, third estate took an oath at the tennis court, and the oath and the tennis court include that mainly aimed at rejection of the divine right of the king that was there. They were calling for the written constitution. Monarchy derives its power from the general consent of the people, and they call for the constitution monarchy. So these are mostly this is mostly the soul of the French Revolution that they are bringing out here. They first reject the divine right. This is all we have already seen in the Enlightenment thinker, that Locke has brought the concept of the social contract, that the state is not the product of the divinity, it is a product of the contract between the people and the government. So they rejected the divine right, that the king is having a divinity and it is driving his power from the divine power, and they call for the written constitution to build a contract in order to govern the state, not in the interest of the only of the nobility or the church, but the interest of all the citizens. And they called for the constitution monarchy. They were of the opinion that the monarchy should drive its power from the general consent of the people. And Rousseau has given this concept of the general will of the people, that the government of the day or the monarchy that should drive its power from the general consent, which will be there in the form of the constitution, that the contract that they will make. And interestingly, the name of the book that Rousseau has given, the general consent, is also named that social contract. So this is one of the fact that we can remember. And king called for the army intervention, of course, because these are the demands that were directly challenging the authority of the state. And the army intervention, third estate stormed the Bastille prison. So the third estate was uh, not not looking to buckle down under any pressure from the first and second estate. They stormed the Bastille prison and attacked the national symbol, released the political prisoner. This was a landmark event. The French Revolution anniversary is on the same day, that is 14th July. So the day when the third estate stormed the Bastille prison on July 14, that is a day that is celebrated as a anniversary to the French Revolution. And similarly, the similar date, that July 4, is the day of the American Revolution. So these are closer date that we can remember. And king agreed to convene the state journal in joint sitting in the backdrop of the attack on the nobles by the third estate people. So when the third estate people started showing their aggression, they started showing their resentment against the state, that they are no longer to be ruled from the divine right. They are no longer to be discriminated, to be exploited from the first and the second state. Then the first state started buckling down. So they agreed to convene the state journal, the joint state journal, in the backdrop of the attack by the nobles, attack on the noble by third estate people. State journal agreed to abolish the ancient institution of the social, political, and economic structure. They agreed to abolish the feudalism, hereditary privilege of the nobility, clergy, that were reserving the jobs for the people, and the tax imposed by the church were also talked about to be abolished. The guild system was also talked about to be abolished. On the August 26, the third estate later become as a national assembly, because these all things, that rejection of divine right, call for the written constitution, and monarchy derives its power from general consent of the people, that these ideas that form the national assembly is like a parliament of India. So these ideas mostly frame the national assembly there. So on the August 26th, the third estate led to the adoption of the resolution of declaration of rights of the rights of the man and the citizen. So mostly three ideas, that liberty, equality, and fraternity, that the ideas they are talking about in the French Revolution: the liberty of the people, the equality of the people, and the fraternity of the people. This declaration was lay the foundation of New France. 1791 was the National Assembly members were willing to establish the constitutional monarchy. So the demand that third estate were again and again raising, that there should be constitutional monarchy. In 1791, the National Assembly, that was mostly made by the third estate, were willing to establish the constitutional monarchy. However, some radical sections like Jacobean were in the favor of establishing the republic. So 1789 to 1791, constitutional monarchy was there. National Assembly was making the call. 1791 was the time when Prussian and the Austrian monarchy adopted the Declaration of Pillnitz, under which they aimed to restore the monarchical rule in the France, and declared attack on the revolutionary in France. So the Prussian, that is the German Empire there, and the Austrian monarchy was they got threatened, because such kind of revolution, when they happen on your border, they have implication on your internal borders as well. Because when people see that the group of people has overthrown the monarchy, they have established the constitutional monarchy, that incentivize and that gives the idea to the people, to the third estate in different part of the world, that people have these rights, people have the capacity to overthrow the monarchy. That's how the Prussian and Austrian monarchy has adopted this declaration, and they attacked in order to restore the monarchical rule in the France. Declaration of the Pillnitz represented the fear of a European monarch who felt threat to the stability of the monarchical rule by the French Revolution and its ideas, because the ideas are the most strongest force. That people may die, but ideas live forever. The ideas inspire the people to to sacrifice their life. Ideas can do wonders. So they were fearful of this idea. They want to kill the idea itself by attacking in the newly formed system of the France, establishing that the monarchical rule is there to stay. It is the source of stability, and monarchy is ruled by the divine right, and it is the ultimate truth. That was the idea behind the Prussian and Austrian monarchy, to declare war over the French state. And 1791 to 93 war broke out. National Assembly leadership was successfully defended the attack from its neighbor, and this is the same type that Napoleon played an important role in defense as a commander in French army. Napoleon popularity soared up very much because he defended his country against the attack from the Prussian and Austrian monarchies and the militaries from there. National Assembly failed to address the underlying problem of the French people in last 5 years. So this was the same time that the experiment with the government in the French state was happening. That monarchy was not anymore there. There was a constitutional monarchy. At the same time, there was a group of radicals that were called Jacobians. They wanted a republican system there, but National Assembly experiment was failing there in last 5 years. 1793, as popular discontent of the people grew in, and many individuals criticized the shortcoming of the National Assembly, weak and ineffective rule. The Jacobian termed such critic as enemy of the revolution, and in 1793 Jacobian established the Committee for Public Safety. This unleashed the reign of terror, under which it executed more than 40,000 individuals, including the king and the queen. In 1793, the Jacobians unleashed the reign of terror. In order to establish their own system, they executed more than 40,000 individuals, including the king and the queen. 1795, the new republican constitution was put in place in France, and the rule of the court of directory was established. So instead of one ruler, the directory was consisted of 5 people, and it was against the idea of the power concentration. So in 1795, new republican constitution was put in place in France, and rule of court of directory was there established, and there was rule of 5 people rather than 1 people. In 1795 to 1799, the rule of the directory turned out to be ineffective and indecisive. So rule of directory was also having certain problems vis-a-vis the rule becoming ineffective, indecisive, and bringing to the solution to the underlying problem of the French society. In 1799, in the eve of the first decadal anniversary of the French Revolution, there was a considerable disaffection among the masses, which eventually led to the scale of the public protest in Paris against the court of directory. Now, from the monarchy, they came into the constitutional monarchy. Now they established the idea of the court of directory. Now people were again dissatisfied with the work of the court of directory in the 10-year anniversary, and there was mass disaffection, and public protest was there also in the Paris against the court of directory. 1799, Napoleon returned to the Paris and took over the leadership of protesting masses against the ineffective rule of court of directory, and argued French need a decisive and strong leadership. So whenever the time is there when the political situation is in turmoil, or the economic situation is failing again and again, that is the time when people are more vulnerable, and they demand for the strong ruler, strong leader. They cannot see a group of people taking decision for them. They look for a leader, they look for a king, and Napoleon emerged as one of the ruler for them. And Napoleon brought an effective coup and reduced the number of directory, called himself the first consul of the France. So Napoleon capitalized this opportunity that was brewing in the France in last 10 years after the French Revolution. 1799 to 1803, Napoleon's succeeded in defending his rule, which British want to overthrow, as they feared that France under Napoleon will renew the Anglo-French rivalry and challenge the British dominance over the Europe. So, in 1799, Napoleon capitalized on the discontent that French people were having and established himself as a ruler. That was the same time the popularity of the Napoleon was growing up and up. When there is a strong ruler, he wants to deliver to the economic benefit of their people, and this was the time then the other powers were getting apprehensive of the dreams of the new strong ruler in the neighborhood. That was a Britain that has an interest in keeping France not in a power position, because otherwise it will again start the rivalry that was settled in 1760, that 6 year or 7 year war that was happening again and again in various part of the world, in India, in Europe itself, in the American Revolution as well. The British were of apprehensive that with coming of the Napoleon, probably these kind of things again start, and they were apprehensive of the rule. And I will mind you that this is the same time that the Napoleon has also established some kind of relation with the Tipu Sultan as well in India. So Tipu Sultan was also inspired a lot from the French Revolution, and he was against the British as well. That was also a reason of, I think, the fourth and the decisive Anglo-Mysore War. So we need to see these things in totality, that what is happening around the world. One event in one place is affecting the different events at different places. That the American Revolution brought the ideas of the liberty and having a democratic form of the government, that has inspired the people that were fighting against the British in America, and that has brought the same ideas to the France, and brought the French Revolution in the France state. And the British were apprehensive of these kind of things, and they were thinking that probably these kind of ideas come to the India as well, and the people may revolt there as well, or probably the strong ruler that Napoleon has established himself will launch a direct attack in the through the sea route, or it may launch attack on its colonies like India. That is the same time when Britain is trying to consolidate the or make struck a deal with the Afghanistan to establish it as a buffer state, so that even if the French or the Russian Empire try to attack the British Empire, that is India, they should not be able to reach India, or they should have enough time to have concentrate the firepower against any misadventure of the French people. And by 1802, Napoleon success in defending against the British attack resulted into Treaty of Amiens, where British formally agreed to recognize Napoleon as a ruler of France. So in 1802, Napoleon has succeeded in defending its territory, his own rule against the Britain, and they have struck a deal that Britain will recognize the Napoleon as a ruler of the France, and probably the France will not attack the Britain. Napoleon victory further increased his popularity among the French masses as a defender of the revolution and its ideas. In 1803, Napoleon organized an election in the France, where he won election comprehensively, following which he declared himself first consul of France for life. This is how it happens. Like, the strong leader comes and through the democratic system, and he then abolished, or he then relegate the same democratic system into the dustbin, that he declared himself as the first consul of France for the life. In 1804, Napoleon declared himself as the king of the France. While restoring some power of the church, he continued to reject the need of any divine sanction for his rule. So this what Napoleon is doing, he is trying to get to the status quo ante, that is the previous to the rule of the constitutional monarchy, previous to the rule of the constitutional monarchy, there was a monarchy, there was a king, there was a right, there was exceptional right to the church as well. Now it is a moderate form of the pre 1789 situation, that the Napoleon established himself as a king, and he has also provided some power to the church to continue, but he continued to reject that any divine sanction is there for his rule. Now, in order to discuss which factor which enabled to rise of Napoleon to the power, so success of the French Revolution breaking the ancient regime. So ancient regime, with the breaking of the ancient regime, there was a restriction of job that got now democratized. Now anyone can take up any kind of job, and Napoleon also became the military commander. Hence he was called as a son of revolution, because he got the popularity through the revolution and he established himself as king. The failure of the successive experiment to establish any rule, any what would you say, any stable rule between 1789 to 93, dissatisfaction with the regime with the reign of terror by Jacobians, failure of the court of directory to establish the stable rule to address the underlying economic problems of the masses, charismatic leadership of the Napoleon against the enemies of the revolution in series of war that he fought. This has enabled rise of Napoleon to the power. Now 1805 to 1815 is a interesting time. That was the last decade of the Napoleon rule. Napoleon wanted to increase his influence, understood the primary challenge to French would arise from the Britain. Hence he aimed to defeat the Britain, because he saw Britain as a adversary, and he wanted to defend the France from the Britain, and he wanted to establish France as a major power. In 1805, France, Britain made preemptive attack on the French navy in the Battle of Trafalgar. French naval fleet was destroyed by the British attack, following which Napoleon's ambition on imposing defeat on the Britain suffered the major setback. Now this is the classic case of the balance of power, that Britain was already apprehensive about the Napoleon's ambitions, and they made the preemptive attack on the French navy in the Battle of Trafalgar, which has caused the major damage to the French naval fleet, and their any ambition to impose defeat on the Britain suffered a major setback. In response, the France imposed the economic blockade on the Britain to hurt the British economy. The continental system in the Europe was established, that there will be no trade between the continental Europe and the Britain. So in order to hurt the British economy, he established the continental system. This will do the two things. Now the British good will not getting a market that was there, that is the Europe, and at the same time it will also fuel the demand or the industrial revolution in France itself, to cater the demand of the other European nation. This will help the economy of the France. That's what Napoleon thought there. In 1806, in Battle of Austerlitz, the France imposed defeat on the Russia and Austria, following which in 1807 Napoleon sought to impose the continental system on the Europe. Objective of the Napoleon was to hurt the British, denying any access to the European market. Continental system would hurt British economic and military strength and provide assured market for the nascent industrial revolution that was emerging in the France, which were unable to compete against the British good. So it was having multifold interest of the France, because the Napoleon was able to impose the defeat on the major powers like Russia and Austria. The continental system established all over the Europe, and this is the same time that you will see in the India that British has brought up the Charter Act of 1813. This is the same type that the monopoly of the East India Company is getting away with, because the capitalist class in the Europe was very apprehensive. They were very they were not in a good state because the continental system was already there in the Europe. They lost their market, and at the same time the mercantile ideas of East India Company having monopoly of the trade with the India and the Asia was not in the interest of the rest of the capitalist class. That's why they lobbied with the government, and they got removed the monopoly of the East India Company on trade with the Asia, India, and China. So that's how the Chartered Act of the 1830 was also having the influence of what was happening in the Europe. And was the continental system a success? British export to the continental Europe declined sharply. Total export from the Britain declined by more than half. It was an initial success. So British survived the economic shock by exporting to its colonies, like I am saying. So they were exporting more now. They were becoming more exploitative. That we will get more raw materials from the colonies, and we will dump our product more in the colonies. French goods were not in quantity or the quality were able to meet the demand of the Europe. So this was the limitation, because the industrial revolution in the France was still at very nascent state. So goods in the quality and probably in the quantity as well, uh, not catering to the demand of the Europe. This has led to the shortage of the goods in the Europe and the France itself. The inflation rose. What happens when there is a shortage of goods in terms of the quality, in terms of the quantity? Either the black market starts, or the inflation, not or the definitely the inflation will rise very high, the food inflation, then the shortage of good. Rulers concerned for their popularity, stability of their empire were also at a stake, because it's not about just having a higher inflation. Inflation makes people very sensitive, so they are ready to do anything in order to feed themselves. So in that case, mostly the exploitative rulers, though, and the discontent against them start to rise. People are very vulnerable at this time, and any revolution can take place. So this was the cause of concern in the other European state as well, that inflation is very high because of this continental system that France is failed to deliver as a replacement of the British. And but its continental system is not helping anyone, only to the France. Was the continental system a success? So that we have discussed. With these concerns, the Tsarist Russia decided to move out of the continental system and re-established its relation with the Britain in 1810. So when Napoleon will get to know this, that the Tsar from the Russia has established its relation from the Britain in order to cater the goods to its market, in order to bring down the inflation, in order to bring down the discontent in the people, resentment in the people, to save its own rule, that it will not go down well with the Napoleon. Napoleon declared the war, and Franco-Russian War broke out in 1812. Now the geography comes into the play. Now, when Napoleon declared war on the Russian, the surprise defeat for the Napoleon, as he underestimated the Russian challenges. So he attacked the Russia during the time of the winters, and the winter in Russia is very harsh. And the Russian military didn't fight, but the terrain was such difficult and such snowy, such wintry, that Napoleon's military could not fight there. They couldn't stand a chance there. In 1813, the European states sensed the military weakness and decided to launch a coordinated offense against the rule. And Battle of Leipzig was fought, where British, Russia, Prussian forces united against the France, imposed a decisive defeat over Napoleon. So once a force is defeated somewhere, this is the time when your other enemies sense the weakness in your power, and that is the same time that they will launch an collective offense against you. That is what happened in order to restore the balance of power. They all wanted not to have a big boss in the European subcontinent, European continent. That's why they launched a coordinated attack against the Napoleon, and they were able to defeat, because Napoleon has already lost in 1810 in in Russia. There was also psychological pressure in the Napoleon and its military, and at the same time the coordinated attack from the other adversaries has brought down the Napoleon's rule again. In 1815, the Battle of Waterloo represented a failed attempt of Napoleon to stage a comeback which had been reinstated under Bourbon dynasty. So what happened when the Battle of Leipzig happened? The Napoleon lost his territory. He was outset from the uh, as a king from French Empire, and the Bourbon dynasty again restored in the France. What was the causes of defeat of the Napoleon? Now it's time to contemplate on this. So continental system which failed to assess the economy, which failed to cater the interest of the France and interest of the other economies as well. They were all facing different kind of problem. They were not able to have the quality goods, and there was shortage of goods that were leading to the inflation. So continental system proved to be catastrophe at multiple points, and it was breeding a ground for the revolution which were not in the interest of the monarchs of the Russian, Persian Empire, and all those other empires that were existing in Europe. Napoleon was overconfident and overambitious. That was also the reason, because he knew that the industrial revolution in the industries in the France was not of the capacity to cater the demand of the whole of the Europe. And also it is not just about the industries, also the infrastructure that in order to transport these things from France to the far east in the Russia, it was not very feasible, considering the kind of infrastructure in 1810 1812 it was there. So that was proven as a catastrophe. Napoleon over aggressive attitude which left France without any allies, only enemies. So with coming of in the power, Napoleon's policy of the continental system of imposing defeat on the Russia and other neighboring countries in initial years, when they were making the collective effort against any change in the French monarchy, which has already showed the popularity of the Napoleon, and his defeat made other state as enemy of Napoleon. Although they were uh, kind of taking on whatever the France was saying, that we need to establish the continental system. They were agreeing to that, but in deep inside their heart, they were having this revenge attitude, and this was the right time that they can come out of their comfort zone, and this is the time when the iron is hot and it's right time to hammer it. So now, in order to discuss the key objective of the Congress of Vienna happened after the Battle of Waterloo. The context was that after the Battle of Waterloo, the four big powers were called Prussia, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Britain, Russia, France. So these were all gathered there, not France, because invited not as a victorious under Bourbon dynasty. So all these powers were invited there, but France was there as a defeated country, but others were there as a victorious state in the Congress of Vienna. And but France was not subject to any war expenses, and it was a mistake of the Napoleon that caused a huge instability and war throughout the Europe. So this was the consensus was made that it was because of the Napoleon that these things are happening. It is not because of the French people. So they were not imposing any war expenses on the France, which is a good thing. And in the Congress of Vienna, the Pax what we say Pax Britannica established that Britain will ensure that balance of power in Europe has maintained, and there is no any major war till the World War One. So this 100 years saw the kind of a stability rule, stability polity in the Britain. Now, objective of the Congress of Vienna was to restore the stability and the peace in the Europe that obviously is there after any war. Any kind of treaty or any kind of discussion takes place in order to bring the stability and the peace in the Europe, which could necessitate bringing back the monarchical rule driven by the uh, divine authority. So they were going back to the previous system that was there already to undo the political changes brought by the French Revolution. So this was also the case when Bourbon dynasty will come. They will try to restore what was there in 1789 to undo the nationalist idea that Napoleon and France Revolution unleashed in the Europe cultural nationalism. So the cultural nationalism was there that came out of after the French Revolution that they tried to undo. Like, and in later part we will see that Germany will also try to bring up these kind of things, Germany for German for Germany, Italian speaking for Italy. So Bismarck and we will see Garibaldi in Italy and Bismarck in German will try to integrate and try to bring out the Italian and German state to the present form that is there. Now principles and steps. So major political reorganization is based on to restore the power. Principle of legitimate rule is there, that only monarchy was a legitimate rule on the basis of divine rule, not on the wishes of the people. Bourbon dynasty rule reinstated, House of Orange restored in Holland, rule of the church restored in the Rome. So these kind of things that was there in previous time that got reinstated in order to bring the stability. Principle of rewarding the victorious power. Victorious powers got the territories, of course, if there were any colonies or some part of the country that they got. The principle of balance of power. The France was surrounded by the rim of the powerful and bigger state. German speaking principalities got right to river Rhine, came under the Persian Confederation, Austrian Confederation. So in order to establish the balance of power, although there wasn't any too much of a war expenses, but of course there was some limitation that French cannot have this much amount of military, and some of the regions of the France were taken by the victorious power, that Germany speaking principalities right to river Rhine came under the Prussian Confederation, that is Germany, Austrian Confederation. So these kind of things happen there. Now evaluate the success of Congress of Vienna. So nationalism. So it tried to undo the idea of the nationalism which came with the French Revolution to having the idea of the French state. It wasn't successful because German unification happened in 1871. Italian speaking, like I already said, Mazzini and Garibaldi, they worked in order to unify the Italy in 1876 and 71. So like this is the perfect and the classical example of the saying from the Victor Hugo, that nobody can stop the idea whose time has come. So it may have been possible that the person Napoleon has died, but the idea of the nationalism, the idea of liberty, equality, fraternity, maybe the French Revolution has gone and the things have restored to the status quo ante, but the ideas which came from the French Revolution were still there, were still influencing the changes in the world. So idea of nationalism which came from the French Revolution, from the American Revolution, that was influencing the world. So this is the beauty of the world history, that we are understanding how these ideas channelize from one place to another place and influencing the geography, the history of different places. Now it also restored the monarchies. Restoring the monarchies was one of the instrumentalities of Congress of Vienna. It wasn't successful, as successful revolution broke out in Europe. So there was a revolution after in 1830, 48, 71. They argued to overthrow the monarchies, and by the 1871 France again became republic. So 1870s is the time when the nationalism and the restoration of the constitutional monarchies, or the some kind of a parliamentary form of government or has established in the European states. Restoring peace and stability succeeded in bringing the relative peace in the Europe for 99 years, and later World War I happened. So, Congress of Vienna was successful in order to stop any major war in the Europe, and it succeeded in bringing the relative peace in Europe for about 99 years, till up till World War One. But it failed to undo the ideas of the French Revolution, except the fact that it bring the century of peace in the Europe. So Congress of Vienna had this benefit that it brought the century of peace in Europe, but it could not undo the idea of the French Revolution. So we understand from this chapter that the ideas are very strong. So maybe people may die, maybe institution may go into the vein, but the idea will emerge at some point of the time, even if you destroy the people who is bringing out that idea. And this is the same idea that people are talking in Indian philosophy as well. The Sri Aurobindo also talk about the now Indian spirit has came into being, and nobody can stop it. And this is the time in 1910 1920s, and he is talking about the independence of India. And similar statement was made by Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, then finance minister in 1990s, about the LPG reforms, that nobody can stop the ideas whose time has come. So although it brought the stability in the Europe, the Congress of Vienna, but it could not undo the idea of French Revolution. The idea of the nationalism which came into being has influenced the world, has influenced the Europe, has influenced the Asia, Africa, and the Latin America, and all over the world it has impacted. That's why the French Revolution is one of the landmark event in the world history that has continuous impact in our history. And that's all for